to the House of Sunny program. It's been a while, right, Doug?
Yeah, I missed you.
I missed me too. No, I've been moving. So you know how that is. Plus, I got food poisoning at the
That's
same
all, huh?
time. Yeah, so that was fun.
What did you have, the bad fish? Like on the movie Airplane?
It it's really awful, actually. The day that I was going on like a new diet, a special diet, like a paleo thing, I was gonna start my morning with some great bone broth, and
Ugh,
I'd made it, I don't know, like a few weeks before, and at some point I put it in the freezer. Apparently I didn't get it in the freezer soon enough.
gross.
I know everybody listening is puking now.
Gas station sushi. I thought that was the culprit.
No, no, my own
Gross.
cooking,
Bone broth.
my own cooking. Anyway, we've got a special guest here today. I guess I'll just jump right into it. His name is Brandon Cropper. We call him Mr. Cropper around here, though, because he's going to educate us a little bit. How
Haha.
you doing, Brandon?
Doing very well. How you doing, Sonny?
So you're a teacher. Is that why you kind of go by the Mr. Cropper? Is that right?
Yeah, when I first started on YouTube, I was opening a private school. I've since closed it, and my daughter is in a Montessori school. I achieved my main goal of getting her a good education. But yeah, that's why I took on the persona Mr. Cropper on YouTube, because at the time I was doing a private school.
I like it.
Thank you.
So Mr. Cropper is an objectivist, and he's kind of a rabble rouser making some waves in the objectivist community. So we brought him on to talk about it because we've had a few shows about that where we talk about kind of what's going on over there. And I think there's a little rebellion going on in the rank and file, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, things don't get interesting until you disagree, so I would say things are getting interesting, for sure.
Yeah. And I think for me, it's not so much. I feel that I've been an objectivist for about as long as you, I think, based on what you said on your show, like 25 years.
Yep, correct.
And I've been around the scene, and I've never felt what bothers me right now is not that I disagree with people, because I've always disagreed with objectivists, and we've always had good, fun debates, and I've always enjoyed the company of objectivists because they are intellectual, they want to chew ideas and talk about these things, and I'm finding that that isn't happening anymore.
Something weird is happening, kind of like on the left where they can't handle comedy and stuff anymore. There's a group of objectivists that can't handle debate, they can't handle ideas, they can't give and take, they can't give a response for their views, they can't support their views. Something very weird's going on. They're acting a
Yeah,
lot like the left, in my opinion.
and that's it. It's kind of like they've lurched left, not so much in ideology, although that too, but in method. And
I don't think that the left has an ideology. I've said this before, that I believe the essence of the left is groupthink. I believe that it is people who are afraid to think for themselves and just want to go along to get along. They accept whatever party line is going on in society around them, and they just try to live their life without worrying about the larger picture. That is the essence of the left, is to get people to not worry about the larger picture, just listen to the story given to you. That is the entire left. I don't believe it's an ideology. I believe it is groupthink.
interesting. So that what you're saying is the reason that they use these tactics and methods is because they don't want you're departing from the collective, and they're kind of pouncing.
Yeah, and more than that, they don't want to be peeled off from the collective because they don't want to share my fate.
Right.
They don't care about the truth of the ideas, do they? A,
So
a lot of them see the truth of what's going on. They even see the validity of what I'm saying, and they see the bad behavior of the objectivists. But
so how could that happen in objectivism, a philosophy that values independent thinking?
I'm still in shell shock about this. I told my wife just last year, I said, the one place the left can never infiltrate is the Ayn Rand Institute, because we would just ask them, what do you know about Atlas Shrugged? And they wouldn't be able to answer it, and we'd kick them out the door. And I was wrong. They've infiltrated by threatening the lives and well-being of the people. I mean, these are a lot of Southern California people, Amy Peikoff, Huron Brook. He used to be in the Southern California picture, and they're all of their friends and all of their family and all of their well-being and probably a lot of their donations come from people who are on the left or sympathetic to the left. So I think they are stuck. I think if they turned around and started saying Trump's not so bad, they would be vilified, they would be destroyed, their lives would be ended. So,
Financially.
yeah, financially, actual real world implications. In fact, it's taken me 5 years to get my channel back to where it was when they demonetized me. So I've
Wow.
only just been able to put ads back on because they said they wiped the subscribers down to 0, and you had to get everyone to press the notification bell.
And
And
why did that happen to your channel?
they did it to everybody, presumably. I assume they didn't do it to everybody because it would have ruined some of their best channels, but they certainly did it to me and a lot of people. And
That,
so I went from 2,700 subscribers, and I could get 200 views immediately by posting a video because 10% or so of people will click on it that day. Down to 0, down to nothing.
wow.
I had to rebuild my channel. I would get literally 6 or 8 views when I posted a video, literally.
So you think that, I mean, I just don't see a whole lot of success, though, in objectivism. No offense to anybody, but I don't see that there's no objectivist channel that does really well, or, you know, a thought leader in objectivism that's famous.
You know, there's Charles too that Rucka Rucka's famous, right? And he gave
Yeah,
Charles.
Rocca's famous, but he got famous before he was an objectivist.
Yeah, and then interestingly, he gave Charles too a bit of a leg up with his fame. You know, he used his connections to give Charles too viewership and so on. And then Charles too ended up with a pretty good stream of money just for making really, really objectivist videos, which confused me for a while. Now I realize that these were just second-handers passed on from Rucka's channel who didn't really understand objectivism or Charles too. They were just in on a group thing. And,
I see.
And Charles too made a bunch of money on that. So yeah, I think objectivism, I was shocked by Charles too's success, but now I understand it better. I think objectivism is necessarily always going to address a small group. Look at the, did you think that you were a major objectivist 5 years ago?
Me, I mean, I started making videos in 2010.
Right.
I never considered objectivists my primary audience.
Right.
Because it's too small.
Well, what if it turns out that you are one of like 25 important objectivists on the scene today?
Yeah, right.
Or maybe one of 10, or maybe one of 3.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that, I guess.
I used to as well, but if the hard work and the lifting isn't being done by the people who are sitting here buying their stuff and listening to their speeches, if they're not doing the hard work and lifting, then someone's going to, and or maybe someone isn't. But I'm trying to do that, and it seems like you are. So we might have to arrogate to ourselves a little more importance than we thought. I thought I was just a guy on YouTube doing videos about Greece and Rome. That's what I thought I was.
I just remember coming up and really admiring the objectivist intellectuals and learning a lot from them. And at some point, I feel like that's flipped, where now I hear them say things and I think, what? Like, what? How can they be so ignorant? Well, how can they not know? They're just being dumb.
Yeah, some of the stuff, for example,
really rationalistic.
Let's give an example of that. Like, I would give the example of Amy Peikoff being mad about the tariffs and simultaneously being mad that Trump hasn't done anything about Hong Kong.
Right, and that's a typical libertarian kind of stance. You know, free trade above everything.
Yeah.
But then also we're supposed to support. Yeah, it's a very weird cognitive dissonance right there.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was her view.
Yeah, and well, she did it on her most recent thing with James Valiant 2 days ago, I think, on None of the Above. And they went over it at length, and James Valiant said, if we have intellectual property right problems, then let's do cyber warfare attacks on them. Why do we have to do tariffs? That was his suggestion. Keep free trade open, but attack them through cyber warfare.
It's similar to the position that they want, probably a lot of my listeners don't know this, but objectivists often call for like nuking Iran. Yeah. Because Leonard Peikoff did. So we can do that, but we can't let a single Iranian individual, we can't keep them out
Right.
for immigration purposes.
Nuke them, but open immigration.
We can nuke them into oblivion, but we have to let them across the border.
Now, why can we nuke them? Because collateral damage, because it doesn't matter, their lives don't matter, it's their government's fault. That's why they should have been involved in their government, taking care of their government so this shit didn't happen. We've got all that, right? But we can't put a tariff on China? Why?
Yeah.
You know, we could put a tariff on China because China's egregious about intellectual property and about slave labor. They've got people locked in factories that are sending us notes, please help. You know, there's terrible things that go on in China. That's why we can treat them badly economically. We can beat them up and we can say, we're not going to be nice to you until you start treating your citizens properly. You know, that's the proper way for us to behave. So why the objectivist leaders can't get this? There are no objectivist leaders. You and I are going to have to arrogate part of this position to ourselves.
I watched your show where you said you're going to take over the bus.
Yeah. And it is some kind of a bus, because I get on there and I look up at the front to see what the guys at the front are saying about quantum mechanics, because I don't know that stuff. And I look into it, and quantum mechanics, they tell me, is philosophically corrupt. It's not based on science or math, and they give me all their arguments and evidence, and I come out the other side knowing a lot about the situation and being able to appreciate things like string theory and know that they're nonsense because they can't be tested. You know, I get this knowledge from the objectivist, from the Ayn Rand Institute and so on. So they are brilliant people that I learn a lot from on a lot of subjects. But it is never the case that there isn't something that will pass my mind that I don't judge. Therefore, now that I see that they are in error, I have to talk about this.
There's always been some, like, if you don't agree, you're not an objectivist. I mean, I think Peikoff has said that a few times. There's always been some of this kind of snotty nastiness, I would say, that is unfortunate and is unworthy of independent thinkers. But it's really just been in the last 3 years, I feel like things have really gone off the rails in terms of you can't disagree. And if you disagree, you get called. You only get called names. You don't get argued with.
Yeah.
And it started with immigration. And for a while, I thought, you know, I used to kind of believe the open immigration idea, and then reality kind of smacked me in the face. And you can't watch Europe, and you can't sort of see some of the things happening in this country, and you can't think about the threat of Islam and still be for open immigration, and just the out of control welfare state, and just all the facts. You just can't be for open immigration anymore. At least, you know, and yet so many of them are, to the point that a lot of times their arguments to me are pure altruism. You know, what about that woman and her child? And, you know, it's just exactly what I would hear from the left. And I can't believe it's coming out of an objectivist's mouth. So we should have our immigration policy because the poor mom and the child who just wants her kid to go to a good school. Yeah, that's sympathetic, but that's not how you build a foreign policy.
Yeah, they want to. Ayn Rand said you can't use the law to stop someone else from bettering their life. And that's what they keep using. You know, and if you have a border, then that's using the law to stop people who are coming in from bettering their lives.
Yes, but we would be sacrificing in the process. And so that's the key, is that is an argument from altruism.
Yeah.
It's not my problem. This is my society, and I have a right to it.
Yeah.
And
Ayn Rand also covered that. She said you can't just say that you want to stop competition. She wrote an essay called The Divine Right to Stagnation. See, I just want to let objectivists know that I'm familiar with all this material, you know, from top to bottom. They're going to, because this is what they're going to bring up.
Yeah.
You know, but Ayn
so what
Rand,
do you say to that objection?
Well, as far as I know, she said immigration is a value to human life, but she didn't say open borders. As far as I know, she only said open borders for 2 countries. She said any nation has a right to do whatever they want to Germany and Soviet Russia because of the behavior of their governments. Doesn't matter what you do to them, they can't claim any rights at all. Now, she didn't say that Japan or Australia were of such a nature in the modern day that we could go do that to them. If they close their borders, what are you going to say to them? That is the prerogative of the people inside that country. And here's another way I get at that. Here's the thought experiment that they bring up the one quote from Rand when she said in that question period, she said, "How could I be against immigration? Because I wouldn't be alive today if I were." Good point. So she's in favor of immigration or else she would have died. Now let's say that we didn't let her immigrate. Let's say the American government stopped her from coming and left her in Soviet Russia. And let's say she died a terrible death in the gulag there and never developed her ideas. Whose fault is that? Is that the American government's fault or Soviet Russia's fault? So of course we can close our borders. And it's not our fault what happens to those people all around the world. Not our fault.
It's just not our fault. And it's not our responsibility either.
Exactly. We're not to turn ourselves into a machine that goes around the world hunting monsters, as our founding fathers said. We are 3% of the population of the world. We cannot let them just flood in here as they please. That is insanity.
It's insanity. And I thought that, I disagreed with everybody on immigration. And I thought that was the only issue. And I really was, this was a few years ago, I was very, very concerned about the language with which they were disagreeing with me on immigration. Terms like xenophobe, racist, evil, coming right out of the Ayn Rand Institute. And I kind of gave them a pass. I thought, who the hell is over there writing this shit? Somebody wrote on the ARI website or the Facebook page, used the word evil to describe people who didn't believe in open borders. And I just thought there's some rogue writer over there who said that and was very disappointed. But I thought it was limited to this one issue that people were really wrong about. And now I see, though, that it's bigger than that because it's every issue. And it's the tech companies. And it's not that I'm saying they should be for regulation of tech companies, but they won't even morally condemn them.
Yeah. They could at least do that. They just go on about the free speech thing. So that's why I think that they are just leftivist group thinkers. They don't have an ideology. And notice that if I'm right, that it's not an ideology, it's just group fear. If I'm right about that, that's why the left would be able to take in objectivists who, ideologically, they do not fit. They just have to parrot some group line.
But why wouldn't they choose the right then?
Okay, they've chosen things which are nihilistic equivocations, modern nihilistic equivocations. So like free trade. The left noticed that we were in favor of free trade. And they said, well, what about free trade with the dictatorships? Why don't you free trade with them too? And so they destroyed the concept of free trade. We used to have a concept of free trade as low tariffs and low barriers among the free nations. And then we totally changed that. Now, 100 years ago we had that policy because importing cattle or something from Argentina, say, would destroy the American cattle market because they can produce it for so much less down there because everything's cheaper because the country's less developed. So our founding fathers didn't want our country's economy to be destroyed by imports from other countries, and so they put in trade barriers even among the free world countries. Then that was all destroyed by modern nihilism, defining free trade as totally zero tariffs with everybody despite all context. And so now we're shipping factories and billions of dollars to our enemies, China, for example. That's
what's crazy is it's not just Argentina or something. It's China.
Yeah.
And, when you look at what China's been doing for the last 20, 30 years, the military posturing, remember when our plane went down and they kept the plane and our soldiers for a few days? Remember that?
Yeah. They're not well behaved and they're getting worse and worse. That's definitely the case.
They're spying on us. And then even I have to believe that somebody like Peter Thiel would not come out and say, I think Google's been infiltrated by China unless he had some basis for that. And he's in that environment, and he seems like a pretty calm, rational dude.
Yeah, he's not
And,
Alex Jones.
and for him to come out and say that, and based on Google's behavior, it wouldn't surprise me because they're acting like a communist dictatorship.
You know, it's a lot like the CCP is running Google and Facebook, taking off anybody who says anything
Sure
in
is.
favor of freedom, Americanism, patriotism. If you say anything like that, you're gone.
Yeah.
And
Sure does seem that way, doesn't it?
I'm on one of these artsy sites where I put my art for sale, and at one point they took everybody off who was selling Americana or Trump paraphernalia. Anything to do with Trump or American flags or patriotism, they took those people off.
Yeah, our flag is now an offense.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Now that sounds like the CCP is running things, doesn't it?
It sure does.
I think we need to have another age of McCarthyism and house cleaning, and where Ayn Rand went before Congress and testified about what she knew about the communists in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I think we need to open up the prisons and start putting some people in them.
We might have a China problem.
Yeah, a communist problem.
What's crazy is that no one was talking about this before Trump.
Yeah, you couldn't. And God damn it, if Hillary would have gotten in, you'd be arrested for saying anything about it. So we could have gone down that road. And look at what Obama was doing to the Tea Party with the IRS.
Yeah.
And you think Hillary wouldn't have done that? And if the Communist Party has infiltrated Facebook and Google, then what would Hillary be doing right now with absolutely no checks at all? So we're so lucky Trump got in, and we're lucky that Trump's talking about this and bringing back the rule of law. Attorney General Bill Barr is like manna from heaven for the rule of law in this country.
Yeah. I hope so. I haven't seen it yet. I want to see him arrest some people. You know, I need to see some of these people go down. When Lois Lerner got off and all those people that did that, I just couldn't even believe it. We had a Republican Congress, and they got off.
Yeah, as bad as that is, I think that things are getting better, and there are threats being made, and the Democrats know that they could be in big trouble any second. They know that the noose is around their neck, basically.
Man, I can't wait. We need that.
Who knows if he'll tighten it? You know, he might want to stay friends and be pragmatic about it. But the thing is, they do know the noose is around their neck, don't they? I mean, they have all their collusion. I think so. The FBI making up this dossier and then giving it to some knucklehead who gave it back to them. I've been
worried about it.
We know about all that stuff. Yeah, I'm worried.
So back to objectivists. So why didn't they go right? You were saying that the left noticed that they're for free markets and said, okay, we'll give you free markets.
For everybody.
Is that all it took? The libertarian obsession with free markets? I actually think it is a libertarian invasion rather than a left invasion, although the left, I think, kind of owns the libertarians, or at least half the libertarians.
Yeah, I think they own the groupthink half, for sure.
Well, let me throw something in here real quick, which is I think it's a combination of factors. This wasn't an issue before Trump because Trump was the first president to stand up to China. Every president since Nixon has kowtowed to China. And so when Trump started going after China, that enraged the Trump deranged left because anything Trump does is bad. And then at the same time, the libertarian rationalists who believe free trade no matter what, without any context or any appreciation or understanding or acknowledgement of geopolitical concerns and the threat offered by the Chinese communists. So you had kind of a perfect storm where you have libertarian rationalists who run the Ayn Rand Institute combined with the left suddenly being for free trade. Remember the WTO people? Remember the riots every time there would be a trade organization meeting by these anarchist leftists who were against free trade? Mm-hmm. And suddenly now the left's for free trade because why? Because Trump opposed it. So you've got a fairly and Trump is whatever, but the more, I think, level-headed understanding of the geopolitical concerns in China would say, hey, yeah, of course we like free trade with other countries that are free, but if we're dealing with Cuba or North Korea or Venezuela or the old Soviets or China, you have to be very careful about what you do. And yet, because objectivists, I think, epistemologically are rationalists, for some reason they've completely and utterly dropped this context. So what aspect of this is rationalism, which fuels Trump derangement, in concert with this political shift we've had in the last couple of years since Trump came in, where everything Trump does is wrong by definition, and that combination of things has set this off. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. To what extent is the Trump derangement syndrome caused by the threat to your livelihood? That if you don't have Trump derangement syndrome, you will lose your job.
Yeah. I mean, to what extent is that connected? I feel like the right has a market. There are people who are successful on the right. There's a growing market on the right.
I just think it's a hard argument to make, to say, like, as we're typically the laissez-faire free traders. And so it's pretty tough, and you have to be intellectually competent to consider the full context and say, okay, yes, we believe in free trade, but look at this actual real world situation where you've got this specific country, China. It's got 1 billion people, has an army, it has a communist party, it oppresses its people, blah, 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 steals our IP. All these things are going on. And so you have to look at that and be able to say, okay, let's untangle this. Like, maybe we should embargo countries like this. Maybe we should have tariffs. Maybe, and there's the concerns over our basic industry. Should we, as a country, we think of ourselves purely as individuals, yet there are certain circumstances where it's rational and self-interested to think of yourself as part of a group, particularly when we're concerned about the preservation of our country and our institutions and our values. So, if we don't have a basic industry producing things like aluminum and metals and so on, and we offshore all of that industry and manufacturing, if we find ourselves in a situation where we were in war and we're reliant on China for rare earth metals, which are used in digital and satellites, and we're relying on other countries to import certain basic materials. So you do have to think about your country. And I think that is hard thinking. And I think on the surface, these involve concepts that objectivists are uncomfortable with, like thinking nationalistically about the preservation of the country, thinking about national defense, thinking about ways to go after
But why, Doug? Why are they uncomfortable with thinking about this? Because you aren't, I'm not, Brandon isn't.
Because
Ayn Rand wasn't. Ayn Rand talked about nationalism very rationally when she said, well, there's either, I loved what you said when he said, Brandon, French people should be American nationalists. And to me, that was like a perfect way to make that point. It's not like we're Nazi nationalists. We're not saying, "Oh, the Vaterland," no matter what, we're exterminating people, but so what? We love our country. That's not it.
I just want
We're not racial about it. We're not. America is completely different, and caring and loving this country is different.
I just want to point out that in the comments of that video, a Pakistani said that he was an American patriot. He spoke up.
Oh my God! Exactly.
He affirmed me. Yeah, thank you. And we know we've got people in Hong Kong. So yeah, it's true that anybody around the world should support America.
Yeah, and Ayn Rand said as much, and she was very pro-American. And when the objectivists criticize you or me or our views, they say things like, you're a white nationalist because you're an American nationalist. That automatically somehow discounts all the black people who live here and all the, somehow you're just for your race.
Yeah, you're on
and you're xenophobic and you're racist. And and they smear people on the right as being, um, unprincipled because we, for some reason, in order to fight the left, are somehow willing to give up all of our principles and just go for a totalitarian, which is Trump supposedly,
Yeah.
and white nationalism and join a collective and become collectivists. And I just don't see it that way, and I can't figure out how they're seeing it that way. And I just feel like it's really, you're not going to change anybody. You're not going to help people on the right not choose white supremacy, say, over, more of a principled American style liberty, if all you're doing is yelling at them and not acknowledging their very real problems going on in this country, like all the racism heaped on against white people.
Yeah, that's real.
That's serious. And if we're concerned about that, that doesn't mean I'm a collectivist white supremacist.
Right.
I just don't want to be targeted for my race. And I mostly think about my little daughter. It's not so much going to be my problem, but I don't want her growing up in a society where she's a minority amongst a majority that hates her for her skin color.
Yeah. And we thought we were doing away with that. We thought we had ended that situation. I mean, that's what the whole equality and affirmative action, everything was all about, was let's all just be equal. I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't Mexicans and black people that started that system. It was white people. We were the ones that were... I mean, and
does that even matter?
Exactly. To think, well, if you're going to think in terms of race and groups, then the white people need a lot of credit. They're being attacked the same way the Jews were being attacked for being wealthy and having a lot of money.
Right.
It's envy.
That's right.
It's envy.
Success is white privilege.
Exactly.
And so my point is that if you start talking about these issues around objectivists, you get smeared as racist.
Yeah. Now I want to mention Yaron Brooks said white nationalists. And that is either a smear or an anti-concept, because if he means racist, then he should say racist or white supremacist. White nationalist just means a person who supports their nation and has white skin. So to use that as a synonym for a bad guy is very inappropriate of Yaron Brooks.
It's kind of racist, actually.
Yeah, he's race baiting, and he's being suckered in by the people who are racists, and he's joining. I mean, what the hell is going on when objectivists are calling each other racist? He's calling us racist because we support America, and we're calling him racist because he's behaving like a retarded leftist.
Yeah, it's crazy. Seriously, what is going on? Why is this happening?
I believe it's groupthink. It's groupthink.
I just wanted to play something for you because I wish that rather than insult and smear people who are fearful of what they're seeing in their country, which is this anti-white hate building and growing, and people openly talking about genocide, openly.
Well, it's happening. In South Africa, it's happening.
What's that?
Genocide's happening in South Africa.
Well, according to Yaron, it is not, and there's nothing to worry about in South Africa.
Well, that's because it hasn't reached 100. If it's only 70,000 a year or less, it's not genocide. So right now, it's not genocide.
No, but I think there's a organization that tracks the genocide risk around the world, and they actually have them at the stage before genocide. So that's pretty serious.
Yeah,
and that's a nonpartisan Genocide Watch, I think it's called. And anyway, and instead of saying, hey, everybody, like, I see what you're talking about, just be sure that you don't go down the road of becoming a white supremacist and talking about the dangers of that from an objectivist perspective and why collectivism is bad. And instead he just insults and smears people. And not just him. I'm not just piling this on your own. I kind of feel like it's a problem going on in objectivism. And there's this woman who is a conservative. She is a full-blown religious conservative. Her channel is Amazing Polly, and she does like research on conspiracies. So she doesn't even talk philosophically, really. And here's how she frames why don't be a collectivist? And I listened to this and I thought, why isn't this kind of thing coming out of objectivism? Why does it take some right-wing conspiracy researcher to say something like this? It really bothered me how good this was coming out of just a layman, not even an objectivist or even someone familiar with objectivism. So listen to this. Just an American who has American values.
And even some people, I would say, on quote unquote on our side, they are begging, oh, join a collectivist group, join the white collectivist group, because it's the only way that we can fight these people back. I will never be a weakling hiding behind, oh, you're victimizing the whites, you're victimizing the whites. Get over it. I'm strong. I'm not going to act weak. That's what they want us to do. They've laid out the card game. Here are Muslims, here are gay people, here are disabled people, here are deaf people, here are trans people, here are black people, here are Mexican people, here are illegal people, here's all your victim cards. And they're like, huh, Whitey, you want in? You want to take some of these? You want to play? You want a seat at this table? And there's actually white people out there saying, yes, take the cards. Let's play this poker game. Then we'll all be trapped in it forever. We're just another of the victim groups lobbying the government for, like, handouts. No. We are strong. We are strong. The problem has never been white, Jewish, gay. That's what they want us to think. It's always been weak versus strong. It's always been good versus evil. It's always been virtuous versus immoral.
What? I mean, right?
I can't believe that that's not coming from the Ayn Rand Institute. Like, she should be working at the Ayn Rand Institute.
Right? There she just made the case, and she brought it to morality, and she did it that is exactly what we should be hearing out of ARI, and we're not.
Yeah. That's an amazing, it was a beautiful statement. And I've said before that the people, the patriots, the regular American people that have been raised with American individualism as their value, the people who liked Trump and liked Reagan, those are the good people of this nation. And, you know, Yaron Brook and company just dismiss them all as xenophobic racists.
Unintellectual, racist, dumb. This woman is not specifically educated, and I mean, she's a regular Christian conservative.
Yeah.
And that's just a regular person.
That shows how
she could come up with a statement like that.
Yeah, being brought up in America and understanding American individualism and freedom, you internalize it and you use that as your compass. And then when you face collectivist groups, you think about it. Candace Owens did the same, and to my knowledge, she's not an objectivist. And she said in one of her interviews, she said, the other side is groups, it's collectivists. Everything on the left is collectivist, it's group-oriented. And I don't remember what else she said after that, but I just, it struck me that even the people on the right are appreciating that they are individualists, and the left are groups. So these are our constituents. These are objectivist friends. If not objectivists, they're at least our friends. I mean, the left is not our friends, for God's sakes.
I know. I'm scratching my head. You look at the news, I see Antifa. I see deplatforming, demonetizing, silencing. I see a government that is knee-deep in corruption, neck-deep in corruption. And socialism waiting in the wings here and on the rise on the left, big time.
And you
can't even say it's on the rise. It is. The left is now full-blown nihilist socialist. Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, those are the leaders of the left right now.
Now, I don't know if you know my extremely positive outlook on this. Do you know why I think that it'll be okay?
Let's hear.
Because we had a period like this that was worse than this in the 1930s, the red decade of the 1930s. And we came out of the other side of that. We had 95% tax rates, for example, during some of the 1930s. FDR was an out-and-out communist. And we came through the other side of that. Europe also came through the other side of that, but torn to pieces. And so it was basically a period of government control of the economy and very severe government control of the economy all over the world. It was a fad for the government to get involved in the economies. And it caused the Great Depression. It was not a period of economic slump. It was a period of government activity. Now, we came through that pretty rough, and this is gonna happen again. Europe is gonna go through the ringer. And America's going to have a rough time. I don't think we'll have 95% tax rates again, but we're going to have a rough time. And we might even have some violent clashes. We might have to do something about Dearborn, Michigan. I don't know. But Europe is definitely going to have to do something about Paris and Sweden and London, you know. And I don't know if they're going to do anything. It might be just like Eastern Europe just disappeared for 50 years. It was just gone for 50 years.
Right.
And why can't
It's
Western
really
Europe
crazy
do that?
what's going on over there. I know a lot of French people and women, and they can't, in their small towns, they can't walk down the street anymore.
Yeah.
And the towns that are still safe are just too expensive to live in.
Now
And
this is in Europe, where it used to be you could sunbathe nude in the park, and
yeah,
and gay people could walk around in Amsterdam hand in hand and make out in public.
right.
That's all gone. You can't hold hands in Amsterdam anymore. You can't even hold hands, gay people.
Really?
They'll get beat up.
Mm.
They'll get assaulted. Yeah, it's extremely dangerous, Amsterdam.
And they're
now.
putting Tommy Robinson in jail.
Yeah, convicted of journalism.
Yes. So that's the state of Europe. It's very scary over there.
That was just a show trial, a kangaroo court show trial. That's all Robinson was.
You know, your own doesn't like him either.
Well, he's a racist, according to Yaron. Now,
Incredible.
do you remember when racists started taking over the British National Party and Tommy Robinson threw a big fit and left?
Yes.
He's not a racist. He hates the racists. He specifically said, we are not doing this for skin color. We're doing this for Britain.
Right.
So, and yeah, Yaron Brook will not say anything bad about Antifa, especially when you mention the Proud Boys at the same time. He says they're both thuggish groups.
Right.
As if one of them didn't start it and the other one's a response. I mean, do we have no values left in our minds? We can't even look at the world. The world's just a blank. We just react to the moment. That's what Yaron is doing.
What's crazy about that is, in this country, even if you're a Nazi, you get to march. And the fact that Antifa goes there to attack even a Nazi, it's just not right.
Yeah.
That's not the values of this country.
Yeah, why would it matter if Tommy Robinson were a racist? I mean, if he's being thrown in jail because of his viewpoints or his opposition to Islamic rapists, why shouldn't we, support a dissident who's being persecuted for his views? And I mean, not only would that be the right course of action with that and with the Antifa Proud Boys thing, but on top of it, they're not bad guys. The Proud Boys are not the instigators. They're going there and they're being attacked, suppressed with the aid and abetting of the local government, and which is encouraging lawlessness and anarchy. So how could you not see that?
Bizarre, like the pedophilia thing is throwing me for a big loop. And that's partly what he's involved in too over there, and that the police were involved in it and then covering it up. And, the fact that that's part of this is so weird. And that just really speaks to the degeneracy of the left.
Yeah.
Where you find them in charge, you find massive pedophilia.
Yeah. I don't know what... I don't have a theory on what the hell's going on with that, except general degeneracy of our values is what they want to do.
Right. I think that's what it is.
I wanted to make a quick point, going back to the ARI folks and why they take this approach. And it goes back to an article that I criticized that Gade wrote about Trump, and it speaks to their rationalism. An example would be, this is a great example, particularly with respect to the religious right. where, in the objectivist mind, in this rationalist mind, they think of something like mysticism, and they think mysticism, anti-reason, therefore all mysticism bad. And so they're unable to then differentiate between, let's say, a modern American Christian and an ISIS is jihadi, because they're both mystics. Yeah. So in their mind, they hold this concept of mystic, and they're unable to contextually value and say, all right, American Christian who goes to church on Sundays, loves America, votes for Trump. In their mind, that person is as bad or worse than, the Islamic radical. And so you saw this kind of thinking when Gotti was criticizing Trump, where he was saying things like, well, Trump's anti-intellectual and Trump lies. And so he would take and isolate these pathologies, these sort of philosophical pathologies or ethical pathologies, and say, because of that, he's a bad guy. And so everything he does is bad, rather than saying, well, all politicians lie. Hillary's a liar. We could isolate her philosophic pathologies too. And in fact, maybe in certain contexts, it's a value to be anti-intellectual. Most Americans that still, our country's been saved by anti-intellectuals, people that didn't go through the universities, who still love this country, who haven't been inculcated in the cult of leftist dogma. So, to say something like, mystics all bad, anti-intellectual people all bad, therefore anything Trump does or says, or no matter how he acts, it can never be the product of a fully realized sort of philosopher king. And so we reject everything he says or does, and he's a bore and everything else. This is such a mistake and such poor thinking, to not put politicians in context, to put facts in context, to say things, to not understand that the religious right now is not the threat in our country. It might have been 30 years ago. It might be in 100 years. It's not right now. The threat is the left. And the right, even the religious right, are our allies in this case. They're the ones it's Prager that's fighting against Google and text censorship. They're the ones who
would have thought the religious right would be the anti-censorship people.
Yeah. Exactly.
30 years later.
But they're so rationalistic. Well, Leonard Peikoff said conservatives are bad and said the religious right is the danger. Therefore, that's dogmatic thinking. Nowadays, that's not true anymore.
Well, that's what Brandon is saying, is that it's the collectivist thinking, that the group think that is screwing up objectivism here.
Yeah, it's not ideology as such. I think it's groupthink and fear.
It's a psychological thing.
Yeah. Well, it's not just psychological. It's losing your job is very real. Losing your job's not psychological. So being kicked out of the Southern California in-group, I mean, Peikoff and Yaron Brook, they have more than just objectivist friends. And if you're in Southern California, then you're in the belly of the beast.
Well, what's funny to me is that...
Am I going to change you guys?
Does anyone go into objectivism to be popular? I mean, come on. These people, I think they're just really bad thinkers, and I think you're right. It's easy for them to agree. They're culturally and spiritually, psychologically comfortable, I think, on the left. And it...
Because it's more of an intellectual side, or they think it is? Because I don't really see that it is anymore, but maybe it once was.
I think in academic circles. I think they're from academia, and so they're more comfortable with that versus the deplorable American.
The cowboy.
The cowboy, the Second Amendment, country music listening American who's patriotic. They hate that. That's anathema to them. And yet that's the fault line right now. It's the left versus those people.
The reason that they don't like those people is because they think that the only reason they love America is out of an irrational, fuzzy home.
Yeah, they say if the right wins, then you'll be standing there with a bag full of religion. Is that what you want?
Right.
And I say, no, I don't think that the right is going to just go nuts religious. I think that separation of church and state is a value on the right.
I see that. I think they communicate that pretty well.
Yeah.
And the other thing is this has been a Christian majority country for a long time. So if it's so bad, wouldn't it have been worse 200 years ago
Yeah,
when it was actually freer and better?
and more Christian.
So it just doesn't really connect, I think.
Well, yeah, and but also, once again, it's an either or way of thinking. Like we can't say, well, right now, here's the political threat. There's a real danger to losing the First Amendment, and that threat is not coming from religious right. It's coming from the left and hate speech codes, and like what we're seeing in Europe right now, where they're throwing Tommy Robinson in jail, and what we're seeing with tech censorship and the rightening of the culture to think, anyone who offends you is dangerous and has to be stopped and suppressed. So that's the real danger that we face now. If the right, yeah, I mean, we should isolate what the dangers of the merger of religion and state would mean. So that's a danger, but that's way down. That's like number 78 on my list right now of fears, is the merger of religion and state. I mean, right now, the religion and state is the left and the state.
We actually, I feel like we have that with environmentalism. We have a religion merged with state. So, Brandon, what do you want to see change in objectivism? Like, what are you hoping happens?
Well, I want the ARI to start parroting my views, first of all. And secondly, I think we should start addressing the real world a little more, because we've got Trump giving lip service to Atlas Shrugged, and we've got libertarians all over the place who believe in, less taxation and government equals force, so we should be careful with government and so on. There are people all over the place who understand these things. When Ayn Rand died, it was not the case. The left and the right were identical. Now, I just want to put a quick plug in here that I'm doing a project on my channel of basically figuring out what exactly the steps are from here. And step one for me is to prove that the modern intellectual scene in America is pretty good. And the way I'm going to prove that is interviews with a guy in France about politics in France. And he says that Ayn Rand is absent from France. And we've already discussed at length the current situation in France and politics, and we're going to discuss more so we understand. So tune into my channel if you want to know what would America look like if Ayn Rand had never been published and we were just rolling along as Republican versus Democrat. That's
interesting. I agree with you, and I think there's when I was involved in the Tea Party stuff when that was happening, and everybody was reading Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
And you definitely hear it in the language in some politicians and thinkers on the right. I don't hear it on the left.
No, she's dangerous to the left and still is, yeah. But the fact that she's popular on the right ought to give objectivists a hint. I mean, it gives me a hint.
Right. It's definitely a hint.
So what do I want to happen in objectivism? I want you and I to keep speaking out and make a fool out of these people.
I think more people are starting to say things. I think the more people that speak out, the more people will speak out.
Yeah.
I pretty much don't agree with, I'll just make this statement here. I don't agree with the people running the intellectual side of the Institute on politics, I would say 95% of the time.
Yeah. And strangely, I don't think they're supposed to say anything about politics because they're a non-profit.
They're allowed to talk about it. They're not allowed to promote a candidate.
Yeah. And that's a fuzzy line, isn't it?
What I'm sick, here's one thing they can stop doing right now, is say that when they speak, they're not speaking for Ayn Rand or the Institute. They are.
Yeah.
When Yaron is out there on his podcast, he is speaking for the Institute. He was just on the Ben Shapiro show, introduced as the person who runs the Ayn Rand Institute.
Yeah.
Whether he does or not, that's how he's being introduced, because he's chairman of the board. And I actually think Yaron needs to step aside.
Yeah.
That's what I would like to see. We need new leadership. Yaron wants to be a radio talk show host, and he wants to be sloppy on his show and not write things down like me. and that's fine. He can't then also be chairman of the Ayn Rand Institute. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
He's too sloppy. He's not scholarly, and he's getting it wrong a lot. And that's not to say that the intellectuals over at the Institute, like Ankar, I also think he gets it wrong. He doesn't write very often, but when he does, it's embarrassing.
And Binswanger, let's not forget Harry Binswanger.
Yeah, Harry with the we owe immigrants an apology for stopping them at the border.
Yeah, bizarre.
And asking them who they are. How dare we?
And then in the next breath he says it's okay to do health checks on them. Why is it okay to do health checks on them? Well, because objectively we shouldn't let people into our society to spread disease. Oh, but we can let them in to spread violence and bad governance?
Right.
And if it's ever possible for like a society to be bad, and a group and a culture to be bad, then it would be okay for us to drop bombs on them. So they definitely agree with the idea that a society or a culture can be bad. Now, can we stop those people from flooding into our country? No. That's bizarre. Yeah. It's just bizarre.
It's really bizarre.
We can bomb the shit out of them, but we can't stop them from flooding into our country. We have to welcome them. That's insane. So what I want to happen is I want these people to answer for their views. Answer the rank and file here. The rabbles are being roused.
That's
and by
right.
the way, any collateral damage as a result of our exercise of our foreign policy and defending our border, that's our fault. But
yeah.
If we nuke them, that's their government's fault.
Right.
And then the other thing I'd like to see is that they stop with the ad hominem.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Immediately.
Let's have some
get
actual...
back to actually being able to have a discussion as objectivists, as reasonable people. Every time I can have that with people, even when they disagree with me, it's a relief.
Yeah, nice, good, solid disagreement without insults would be nice. If the ad hominems are true and so on, then put them at the end of the paragraph. Like prove your whole thing, show that the guy's an idiot and a moron, and at the end say what an idiot. But like
that's how Ayn Rand did it.
Yeah, exactly.
She never thought she didn't have to prove her case.
Exactly. So
well, and where's the scholarship? Where these guys are supposed to be professional intellectuals. Where's their writings on these? I'm an idiot, blogger who's written thousands and thousands of words on immigration, and I've opened myself up and said, argue away, tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting because, especially with social media, it's just snark and snippets and people talking past each other. These are complex political topics and applications, and so you have to start with your case and start with some points and define things and reference and link to other articles and bring in other history and context and all these. I mean, this is complicated stuff. So that's what scholarship is. It's not screaming racism on a podcast. That's unbecoming of any intellectual, much less an organization that's asking for money to spread Ayn Rand's ideas.
Yeah, no, another way they could move towards actually spreading Ayn Rand's ideas, I think, for example, with the recent tariff thing, they could have done speeches or panels about how tariffs are actually bad for farmers and try to address farmers and agricultural groups and maybe get a couple of pamphlets out there explaining, dear farmers, this is why you should not support tariffs for your products and so on. And, use this as a time to spread Ayn Rand's ideas in relevance to current politics, because it's applicable today, and they're just ignoring the political scene because it's all just mystics and who cares about it. This is the best and the only political scene on the planet that anyone should care about.
Yeah, but they also they don't give advice to farmers. They just bash them.
Yeah.
And so the farmers aren't listening to them.
Yeah.
And it's just a really bad approach. It's an antagonistic, nasty, mean approach to trying to sell ideas to people, and it's just bizarre. They're just condescending, like, these farmers, these stupid idiot farmers, they don't get it. Well, explain it.
Yeah.
So.
And that's where some actual objectivist work could be getting done instead
Yeah,
of the
I
name
agree.
calling and parroting everything the left says.
It's kind of the thing I played about from Amazing Polly. To me, that is a positive, non-shaming way of convincing people not to go down the white supremacy route out of fear, or because we're seeing ourselves being herded into a collective, a white collective, and it's true, that's happening. And rather than shame anybody who is in that herd, it's happening to us, but from the left.
Yeah.
And so instead of shaming us, inspire us.
Yeah. It's weird. They push us into a corral and then they mock us for being inside the corral.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's definitely all coming from the left, and the objectivists at the ARI would do better to be attacking the left than cozying up to every single last left talking point, including open borders.
Every single left talking point. That is and then calling us names when we don't agree.
Yeah.
It's got to change. The attitude has to change. And I have to think that attitudes, they come from the top. And I'm seeing your own honest podcast being dismissive, condescending, sneering. I mean, I don't think I have to look very far to see where this attitude is coming from. And I don't like it. And I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad you've been speaking out. And I'll keep speaking out. And maybe some changes will happen.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, we should probably talk again in the coming weeks as things develop and see where this bus is going.
Happens. Thanks for coming on the show. Hey, one last question. Did you do stand-up comedy?
Oh, yes.
Really?
I've done many sets. I've never gotten paid much for it, only a few times. But yeah, I've done quite a bit of it. It's a lot of fun.
Because I've done it, and Doug and I regularly call each other and run jokes by each other.
Oh, really? Well,
we're joke writing buddies.
Maybe we should have a relaxed get together and all of us sit around and just tell jokes.
Premises?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
That's a plan. Let's plan that.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Sonny. Doug, nice talking to you.
Take care.
Thanks, Brandon. Take care.